Hello, my question is to Alicia Chen, and the question is, what should we do if we feel that RLD has been incorrectly assigned in the Orange Book? So who should we contact?
I'll take this one on behalf of Alicia. So I understand your question to be, what should an applicant do if they understand that, or if they believe the RLD is incorrect in the Orange Book? You should submit a control correspondence to the Office of Generic Drugs, inquiring about the accuracy of the RLD.
Okay, thank you.
All right, microphone number 2, please.
That they could do that. Somebody now at the agency that can do that?
Could you repeat the question for me, please? I
So,
apologize for that.
Thank you. Regarding the therapeutic equivalence code of the Orange Book, years ago we asked for a code to be clarified or changed, and that wasn't possible. Has that policy changed subsequently?
So just to clarify, are you referring, so your question is about a TE code clarification or change in the Orange Book. Is this related to a specific drug product or a general question about TE codes?
No, a specific drug product.
Okay. So the basis of submission guidance states that if you'd like a TE code, or if, I guess if you have questions about the accuracy of a TE code, that you would submit a citizen's petition to the agency.
Thank you.
Sure.
Let's go with an online question, if we could, please.
This is an Orange Book question. The Orange Book lists an NDA's drug NCE exclusivity expiration, but has patents listed for a synthetic pathway of chemical precursors and formulation matrix, which expire several years after the exclusivity period. Can an ANDA be approved prior to these patents expiring?
I'm sorry, I did not get the entirety of the question. I heard the last part. Can an ANDA be approved prior to NCE expiring?
I'll be happy to repeat it.
Okay, thank you.
The Orange Book lists an NDA's drug NCE exclusivity expiration, but has patents listed for a synthetic pathway of chemical precursors and formulation matrix, which expire several years after the exclusivity period. Can an ANDA be approved prior to these patents expiring?
So I would just like to comment that patents and exclusivity are different types of protections that work separately to protect a drug. Specific to the question being asked, our office takes a look at the particular protections that are on any given drug. And they also assess the applicant's certifications to those patents. So I think it would very well, in most cases, yes, a product can be approved prior to the expiration of all of the patents in the Orange Book, because as you know, many patents go out for, you know, a great number of years. But these products also still have generics. So likely the answer is yes, but I think it very well depends on the type of patent that is in the Orange Book and the applicant's ability to innovate around that patent.
Okay, microphone number 1, please.
Can you confirm that an injectable product packaged in a vial by the RLD would be an ANDA if it's packaged in syringe?
We can neither confirm nor deny. And I will point out, one of the things that this venue is no substitute from is for contacting the agency and a review team specifically, but if any of the panelists would like to share thoughts on that?
I would think that'd have to come in as a control or formal question into the agency.
Okay. Microphone number 2, feel free to pull that down a little bit. There we go.
This question is to Alicia. With reference to a recently approved ANDA, the marketing start date is in the future, let's say 1st of August 2019. The marketing start date has been communicated to the FDA. My question is, in the Orange Book, the status of that particular drug product, if it shows as discontinued, what does it mean?
I just want to make sure I am understanding the question. So you're saying that a recently approved ANDA that is not to be marketed until August 2019 is showing as discontinued in the Orange Book, and you'd like to understand what discontinued is
Yes.
referring to.
Yes.
So essentially, the discontinued status reflects the current marketing status of the application. And so if once that August 2019 date is coming up, then the Orange Book's listing should be updated to either RX or OTC, whatever is applicable, to reflect that it's active. So the DISCN discontinued status does not mean it's withdrawn. It could either mean that the application is withdrawn or that it's discontinued from marketing.
So therefore, the marketing start date hasn't begun as yet. So as it stands right now, then discontinued means it's not available in the market right now. Right. And come August 1st, the status would change in the Orange Book?
You're good, go ahead.
Okay. So it depends on whether, you know, the communication from the sponsor. And so that was one of the intents of that 506I guidance that came out earlier this year, that once 1 to 2 months before the launch, the commercial marketing date, we do need the sponsor to notify the agency of the commencement of marketing so that the Orange Book can be updated in a timely fashion.
But the marketing start date has already been communicated to the FDA.
Okay. That does not need to be done again.
No? Okay. Right. Okay, thank you.
Okay, let's go with an online question, please.
This is a question sort of for the panel overall. Once the ANDA is approved, if the RLD has been discontinued from sale for many years, but the NDA has not been withdrawn, how does the ANDA holder go about making a label change if the NDA label has not been maintained?
Okay, no one's leading forward. Someone's supposed to lean forward at this point.
So we do have guidance on that topic on our website about updating ANDA labeling. Its exact name escapes me right now. But there is guidance on there. Unfortunately, I was not writing it, so I cannot tell you what it says, but there is guidance on that topic.
Okay, so it sounds like online audience can go to the guidances page for CEDAR and search on that topic.
Yes, it would either be under the generic section or perhaps the procedural section.
Okay, perfect. And if there are more questions here in the room, please come on up to the microphones. Next online question, please.
This is directed towards Beth and Elizabeth. After many attempts, if an applicant fails to demonstrate BE with the RLD, can an applicant submit a 505(b)(2) application for the same pharmaceutical equivalent to the RLD by demonstrating efficacy study only, or is ANDA the only option?
That's right, I'm Mike, sorry. Could you please repeat just the very beginning of the question?
After many attempts, if an applicant fails to demonstrate BE with the RLD, can an applicant submit a 505(b)(2) application for the same pharmaceutical equivalent to the RLD by demonstrating an efficacy study only, or is an ANDA the only option?
So sort of the end of the question is irrelevant. It comes back to the beginning, and I forget which slide number in particular it was, but it was one of the slides in our presentation. If the proposed product is a duplicate of a product in the Orange Book, and it comes in as a J, And it just so happens that the BE studies they conducted failed and did not demonstrate bioequivalence. That's what we refer to as failed generics. You cannot come in the B2 pathway in that scenario.
Okay, microphone number 2, nice close for me, please.
So we have a rDNA origin RLD for a peptide which is less than 40 amino acids. So we have an option of developing a synthetic peptide referring to this rDNA origin RLD. So I can file an ANDA, or we can also have an option of developing rDNA origin, a generic version, where I need to file a 505(b)(2). So if I file a 505(b)(2), can I still get an AB rating?
That's a complicated question, and I know Kendra's going to help me on this. I mean, the TE determinations are done sort of separate from approval decisions on B2 applications.
The only thing I would add is that after approval that you would probably need to submit a citizen's petition to the agency in order to have that evaluation made.
Okay. Next online question, please.
When choosing a reference standard, are market leaders identified? And this was directed in the Orange Book section.
With respect to choosing a reference standard in the Orange Book relies on the information in the files to determine a market leader. That information is not identified publicly, but it is information that is available to us. Thank you.
So, as a sponsor, I showed my interest in discontinuing one of the product from the FDA, and then I got an acknowledgement from FDA for my interest. So, will the Orange Book status will be updated immediately or after the discontinuation is published in the register? Which one will happen?
Mind repeating the first part of the question again?
So I have an application which is approved and the product is in market. But as a sponsor, I showed my interest to discontinue this product from the market. Okay, and I have communicated this to FDA, and I have received an FDA acknowledgement for that as well. So the Orange Book status will be immediately updated as a discontinued product, or it will be updated only after the discontinuation has been submitted or published in the Federal Register.
So once the process for the marketed status updates are occurring on a monthly basis, there's information about the timing of those monthly updates on the Orange Book FAQ website. But in terms of the timing of this particular discontinuation, it really would depend on when the Orange Book is made aware of it. So if you had followed the, either the 506I notification guidance in the proper way, then it would presumably be made with the following Orange Book monthly update.
Thank you.
This is a question directed to Susan. In the case of a 505(b)(2) application, the TE rating is not automatic. Can you explain the intricacies to apply for TE ratings and typical timeline to get the TE rating?
Sure. So the question had to do with TE ratings for 505(b)(2) applications, and if there is not currently a TE rating in the Orange Book. What a potential applicant can do is submit a controlled correspondence to the Office of Generic Drugs requesting designation of that 505(b)(2) application as a reference listed drug, and we will review the request. Do you have anything additional, Kendra?
I just wanted to clarify the question. So it's asking for a 505(b)(2) TE code rating? Okay, if that's the case, then the referencing approved products, the ANDA submission guidance from 2017 would refer them to the citizen petition process to request a TE code for a 505(b)(2).
Okay, and once again, folks, if you have questions here in the room, please come on up, come to the microphones, but let's go ahead with another online question if we could, please.
This question's for Beth and Elizabeth. Will the agency accept the petitioned ANDA if the petition is approved after the ANDA submission and before RTR action letter?
No, the approved suitability petition has to be included in your cover sheet for that ANDA.
Okay, and we have a gentleman up here at the microphone number 1. Please go ahead.
For basis of submission, sometimes we have to use RS, and for that we have to do CC. So we can submit our ANDA using RS as a basis of submission without submitting CC?
Are you asking if you would like a different reference standard or a new reference standard designation?
Yeah,
What to submit?
Yeah, because in Orange Book there is no RLD available, only RS is available, and there is no information about RLD. So we have to use RS as a basis of submission.
That, it depends on the specific situation. So it sounds like you're saying that if there is no RLD designation, can you use the reference standard as a basis of submission? And that you can submit a controlled correspondence to the Office of Generic Drugs for that particular situation. And I did want to also make a correction to something I said earlier. So the citizen petition for a TE code request for a 505(b)(2) is correct. The source of that information is from our Orange Book preface, not from the guidance I referenced earlier.
Okay, let's go with another online question, please.
Another Orange Book question. If an applicant intends to submit an ANDA for an RLD having an AA or a AT rating on the Orange Book, does it mean that for the RLD, in the absence of the product-specific BE recommendation, can an applicant request an in vivo BE waiver?
So if a product in the Orange Book is listed with an AA or an AT rating, it is intended to indicate that a product may not require in vivo bioequivalence testing. However, I would always refer to the most updated guidance as available from the Office of Generic Drugs, just to ensure that any recommendations for bioequivalence studies have not changed.
Microphone number 2, please.
Is there a commitment time frame for responding to a CP? You've referred to CPs many times. One product we've been pursuing, the RLD is discontinued, actually I think withdrawn, and the reference standard no longer commercially available for years, but it is listed as active. So you file a CP, how long does it take to get the response and the new designation?
Sure, and I appreciate that question regarding timing of the issuance of a CP. Unfortunately, those the citizens' petitions are not sort of driven by our office, and that's an agency-led activity. So I can't give you any further information regarding the timing. I do know that those are prioritized to the utmost, and every attempt is made to get them out in a timely manner.
Online question, please.
Another Orange Book question. Can a TE rating determination be evaluated during the review of a 505(b)(2) rather than post-approval?
The therapeutic equivalence codes are evaluated after the approval. They would not be evaluated during.
Okay, microphone number 2, please go ahead.
I have a product which is very similar, I think 100% similar to RLD, but RLD is available as a single dose vial, but I would like to introduce it as a pre-filled syringe. So ANDA or 505(b)(2), which is the suitable route?
So those questions, it sounds awfully product specific, so I would recommend a control correspondence to the agency and we can review it that way.
Okay.
Let me just add to that because it's sort of come up a few times. We actually work very closely with the Office of Generic Drugs because there are so many applications that come to the agency where it's in that gray zone. There's a lot of applications in that gray zone. And so even sometimes when we get them and we receive them as 505B2s, we look at them and we say, this kind of smells like a generic. And then we'll send emails over to our colleagues in Office of Generic Drugs to check with them to see if the applicant has in fact submitted a controlled correspondence to ask about their specific product. So we keep saying that answer, but it really is the best avenue for you to get a solid answer to a very specific product you have in mind. Because again, there's a lot of them that are really close and there's lots of little nuances. The thing about suitability petitions, the fact that you as applicants have a choice. Even if you could come in the suitability petition pathway, and even if there's an approved suitability petition for that change that you're thinking of, you still have a choice. So that's why we kind of keep repeating that answer. Your best course is to submit that very specific question to the Office of Generic Drugs, and they'll be able to give you some feedback.
Okay, thank you for that clarification, Beth. Let's take an online question if we could, please.
This is regarding labeling. How do we follow the RLD labeling if the RLD is discontinued or it's too old like in the 1960s? Can we use the RS labeling instead?
I can't give the official response on that question. I would direct the person who asked that question to check that labeling guidance I referenced earlier, and that might have some more specific information there.
And let me interject for a second. I failed to mention earlier on, for those of you online, we get lots and lots of online questions. We don't have time to get to all of them here. If there are unanswered questions at the end of this, CEDAR SBIA at fda.hhs.gov. You can submit any questions you have there, and they will work with you to find the answers, working with the experts throughout the center. Microphone number 1, nice and close for me, please.
Yeah, so I know for a lot of questions you've mentioned about the control, going through the control correspondence route. We had a specification and we were told it's a project correspondence, which I've not heard of before. So what's a project correspondence and what's the usual duration of response to that? I didn't find any guidance on that either.
What was the particular type of correspondence?
It was for the product. We had the number of samples that you are supposed to retain at a site. It's usually 5. We retained because we had 2 different sites. We had retained 3 samples at one site, 3 at the other site. Overall, we are still above the 5 samples, but we just wanted to check if that's acceptable. So that was termed as a project correspondence, and it's more than a year now, but we haven't received a response to that. So.
And feel free to jump in, anybody else. But to me, it sounds like a control that should go to the Office of Bioequivalence. So perhaps it was sent to a different group other than the bioequivalence group. So I would suggest maybe reaching out to that, submitting through to them instead.
Instead of the control correspondence?
Right, to the Office of Bioequivalence.
Okay. Any other thoughts? All right, we've got about 3 more minutes for Q&A. So if there are any other questions in the room, please come up to the mic. But let's take another online question, please.
This question's to Beth and Elizabeth. Can you file a suitability petition for the drug that has no RLD and it is listed as an unapproved drug product?
So I think the criteria for when a suitability petition is appropriate is pretty well laid out in our regulations. Those particulars make me a little weary. I would review our regulations on when a suitability petition is appropriate.
Yeah, the other thing I would add is that the end of that question didn't sound quite logical to me. They said something about an unapproved product. Well, an unapproved product is not a listed drug that can be the basis for any kind of application. So perhaps I've just misunderstood the question, but if there was an element of that in your question, just keep that in mind. An unapproved drug is not something that can be a basis of a 505(b)(2) or a generic.
This might also be a good opportunity for me to mention some of the types of products not listed in the Orange Book. Unapproved products are one bucket of that. There's also, you know, products that are not approved for both safety and effectiveness by the agency. And then, of course, products that were just tentatively approved and not fully approved. And then also the products that were approved but not marketed prior to the first edition of the Orange Book in 1979 would not all be listed in the Orange Book either.
Okay, we've got time for 2 more questions, and I see 2 people at the microphone. Let's start with microphone number 2. Please go ahead.
Why should the goal date for labeling amendment, which is basically to be in line with the RLD update, get shifted?
So I'm sure there was a presentation on goal dates. It's not really our area of expertise up here.
Yeah, if this is beyond the scope of what you guys were talking about, are there additional resources available on the web to that question, or?
I'm sure there probably have been presentations either today or tomorrow focusing on GDUFA dates, or I would look up other labeling.
Let's table that one to see if it gets answered tomorrow. And we can circle back around. Okay, last question for this session. If you step up nice and close to the microphone, please.
How many days applicant has to submit marketing status report to FDA after approval?
So I think the dates are laid out in the statute under 506I of the FD&C. If the product's not going to be marketed, then you need to notify the agency within 180 days of your not marketed, of the approval that you do not intend to market your drug. Similarly, for an approved marketed drug, if you should notify the agency within 180 days of your intent to discontinue the drug product.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, and that's we're gonna give our panel a break. Please help me thank them for